A little bit more. Okay, so thanks everybody for joining today. I'm just going to share my slides and get the session going. Thanks for those who joined my poll today. If I could just ask Andrew or Jonathan, my speakers today, to keep an eye on the waiting room. I think you can see that because you're co-hosts, just so whilst I'm sharing my slides. Unfortunately, my colleague that was going to help with the tech today is unwell. So it's just me hosting with my speakers, Andrew and Jonathan. So welcome everybody. My name is Megan. I work for the Centre for Sustainable Energy. And this session today is about the role of community energy in delivering local retrofit services. So if you're definitely in the right place if you signed up for this. This webinar is part of the Northwest Community Energy Pathways programme, which is funded by the Northwest Net Zero Hub and delivered by us, CSE, and also CAG consultants. The programme supports the community energy sector in the Northwest, both through providing expertise and sharing best practice. So today is a part of a series where we're showcasing best practice from the community energy sector. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction on what we mean by retrofit and sort of the high level role for community energy in the sector. And then I'm going to hand straight over to Andrew, who's on the call today from Rossendale Valley Energy, to talk about their Net Zero Terrace Streets project. And then I'll hand over to Jonathan from Carbon Co-op to talk about Carbon Co-op, what they do, and the People Powered Retrofit Programme as well. And then we'll sort of end with some further resources and wrap up. I do ask that you use the chat function if you've got any questions. What we'll do today is we'll hear from Andrew, and then we'll take a bit of a pause to ask any questions about his presentation, and then we'll hear from Jonathan and pause for questions after that. And if we've got a bit of time to take more questions at the end, that was great. If we don't get to your question in time, I do apologise, and we will definitely follow up via email. But please do pop them in the chat as we go along. So just to sort of make sure we're all understanding of what we mean by retrofit, because I know it's a bit of a buzzword and it's often used a lot. So just to explain, so retrofit refers to any improvement work on an existing building to improve its energy efficiency, making them easier to heat, able to retain heat for longer, and replace fossil fuels with renewable energy. It's really crucial for reducing our carbon emissions as well as cut down energy costs for households. So it tackles both the climate crisis as well as fuel poverty in the UK. So the UK has some of the oldest and worst, apologies for the typo there, it's very embarrassing, worst housing stock in Europe. Retrofitting our homes and buildings is one of the biggest challenges in the UK in our efforts to reach net zero. So what do we see the role of community energy in all of this? So we know that there is interest in retrofit from householders, but there's also a lack of confidence in making the right choices and finding quality contractors to do the work. We at CSE and probably everyone on the call today see community energy organisations as trusted deliverers of retrofit services and intermediaries, people that people in a local community can trust. So really important as we support householders to make those choices for their homes. Community energy can provide information and advice, raise awareness, run events to showcase local examples, build a network of local installers, and initiate street level projects, and a number of other things, which I'm sure we'll talk about in the presentations today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Andrew to take us through the Net Zero Terrace Streets project. I will share my screen, and then you can share your slides.
Oh, yeah, sorry, sharing on Zoom is different.
That's okay. Take your time, yeah.
Is that shared? There we go.
Yes.
Let's do. Come on, computer. There we go.
There we go. Yeah, that works.
Okay, so that's okay. Okay, so yes, I'm here to talk about our project, Net Zero Terrace Streets, and I'm Andrew Pinches. I'm the operations director at Rossendale Valley Energy, a community benefit society working, as the name suggests, in Rossendale, which is situated in East Lancashire. Um, Net Zero Terrace Streets is currently funded by Innovate UK, and we're not necessarily doing this alone. We've got an ecosystem of partners working together, various groupings, which started off under loads of different funding streams, through Community Renewal Fund, Strategic Innovation Fund, both Discovery and Alpha, now through Innovate UK, and going on to work through the Network Innovation Allowance. We've also pulled in some expertise from the UKIB, which is now National Wealth Fund, as well as plenty of investment and legal advice. So what will I be going through today? I'm going to be going through kind of why are we doing what we're doing? Why terraces? Where did we start? Where are we up to? Key learnings so far as to what we've learned and where we're up to with it. Like summary, and then we'll like Megan said, we'll come onto some questions. So, why terraces? There are 10 million 2 to 3 bed terraced homes in the UK, many of which have little outdoor space to accommodate an air source heat pump. This photos from Coop. You can see this is most of the outside space that these properties have. Front is straight out onto the street. This one, you can see these are back to backs. These are pretty much everywhere in Rossendale. There's absolutely no space here for an air source heat pump to go anywhere on these, straight out onto the street, straight onto another property at the back. And then there are instances like this where the terraces have been converted, bottom floors have converted into shops, and then the tops have been rented out as flats. So again, these are straight out onto the street, and again at the back they'll be similar to the ones that were in the first picture. These properties, large proportion of these will be 19th, early 20th century properties, low energy efficiency with high levels of fuel poverty, and there's a big affordability barrier in these properties to get people to think about decarbonisation, and the decarbonisation of heat, let alone kind of retrofit in general. The default choice for a lot of these properties will be the electric boiler when gas systems are no longer permitted to be put in, which, yes, they're cheap to buy, but they're currently on the current prices are expensive to run, and people aren't really putting the heating on at the moment anyway. So if it's going to cost more for them to do that, they're highly unlikely to be putting the heating on. It also puts quite a big additional pressure on the grid, which will lead to expensive, time-consuming upgrades, which is a big barrier to net zero. So where did we start? The writing's very small and you can just about make it out, but essentially that middle bit is kind of where we started. We looked at kind of how do we make this affordable, low carbon energy. Looked at the no upfront cost, levels of retrofit. Through previous funding streams, we kind of settled on an ambient shared ground loop system, which I'll talk about a little bit in a minute, and then kind of where that power comes from and how it's generated and kept within that. And we kind of worked outwards, worked on the financial side of it, the engagement side of it, supply chain, smart energy systems, and all of this. And if at any point it doesn't get to back to this box, or if something changes within this box that we can't get to more around the affordability, the no upfront cost, and we went back to the drawing board and tweaked it and made it just so that it is going to be affordable. If we can't achieve what we want in that box, the affordable low carbon energy, then we failed at what we're doing and we start again. So that's kind of where we've started, and we've kind of built that out to where we are now. So, which is the installation of ambient loop ground source heat pumps, in-street boreholes, shared ambient loop systems in the ground, small ground source heat pump in each property, smart hot water tank, and we would put in new radiators in there if they were needed. Pensa are a partner on the project, and we're taking learnings from the work they've done in Stithians down in Cornwall, where in the Heat Streets projects, where they've essentially done exactly this for a community of gas properties, and we're taking that learning and seeing if we can transpose it into terraces for the decarbonisation of heat. We're also providing efficient retrofit to the properties to improve fabric, plus any sort of maintenance or repairs that need to be done, so that the house can be heated by the heat pump that's going to be putting it in, retaining heat and not losing it. We'll add solar PV where we can, where it's viable for us to do so. But essentially, what we're looking to do is put that heat pump in and then build the retrofit around that heat pump, so that we will bring the heat load of the property in line with it, which does kind of go against what the norm is. But we're going for more shallow retrofit side to that heat pump, so that it's more appealing to people, so that we're not having to do masses of deep retrofit before we can look at the decarbonisation of heat. On top of this, we're working with Electricity Northwest to develop a smart local energy system, which will sit between the home and the grid, so the home energy management system and the substation itself, which will allow residents to join up to this smart system or energy club, or however we want to name it, to help tackle the spark gap at the moment, which is a big barrier to these electric systems being put in, to help lower the price of electricity for customers by essentially looking at that local level balancing and aggregation to help drive down those costs. It also allows the program to be delivered in a phased and coordinated approach, which is much better for planning, both for the grid and for local people, and it brings economies of scale, builds up local supply chain, which results in skills and jobs on that local level. We're also looking at scrolling on the wrong one. There we go. We're also looking at the retrofit standard, and how the moment it doesn't always line up with what we're wanting to do. All the current standards look at fabric first, and don't get us wrong, fabric first is brilliant, and lots of people have worked very hard to get to where we are at the moment. But sometimes fabric first isn't affordable for everybody, and not everybody has access to grant funding. And we're looking what options are available for kind of these area-based projects, and how we run through that, to essentially build out our own standard, which will come off at the end of the project. What we're designing that shallow retrofit to accommodate the pre-sized heat pump, while including considerations similar to PAS for future whole house, like deep retrofit within the design. And we're currently, as we're running through, applying as best we can with PAS 2035. But we're looking to see how we can build that standard off the back of this. Currently, we've taken all of the things I've talked about up to now, and we have started to pull them together within 3 demonstrator properties, 2 of which are mid-terrace properties in the same street, and then we've got one that's a little bit up the road, which is a different archetype, back end terrace. They're currently in the design phase, and we're hoping that the properties will be fully retrofit by February 25, with the heat pump and borehole and everything sorted as well. This will allow us to monitor what's going on in the properties this heating season for a couple of months, because it's still cold up in Rossendale in February into March. So we'll get some good data there, and it will allow us again to have some in next year's major heating season. In Rossendale, we have these four main archetypes of properties: stone terraces, mid and end terraces, back to backs, and then back to back end terraces. And as part of our demonstrator project, we're looking to try and incorporate an archetypal design through this, which will help us in the next phase. We're looking to see whether we can get one design for one property in the street and see if it can be transposed onto another one further up. And then the end terrace, we're looking to see if that can be transposed into in the next phase of what we're doing. So finances, lovely finances. Currently, we've got Borough Hoppold on board, who have deployed a techno-economic model that pulls through figures from the heat system, the retrofit controls, along with solar PV, electricity costs, to combine them and produce essentially cost to the customer. So we're looking essentially to build all this together, and then we will look to debt finance across around 40 years. We're putting in new infrastructure in new boreholes, and we're looking to package up the retrofit, the solar PV, and the cost of the heat pump and borehole together, and then finance that across that time period. And then the resident would essentially pay back the equivalent of a standing charge or connection fee to be connected to the ambient system. And then with the new heat pump and the smart system, the bills will be brought down to a level where it would be more or less comparable with what it is now. It's been further developed. You know, it's nowhere near complete. You know, it's changed with inputs with the three demonstrator properties that we're working on. Things are getting thrown up left, right, and centre that we're pulling in and seeing how it can be tweaked. It's all sorts of things, cost of operations, making sure there's lots of things, making sure the standing charge is capped and can't rise rapidly in case of inflation hikes or things like that that could put things like this at risk. We're working with people like Abundance, who are working up that financial model that links to this. They're giving us those finance and investor views on this. We're not working with them on the community municipal investment bond. They do provide advice, investment advice, and that's what they're kind of on the project to do. So they're helping us kind of work through this. And we're also working with the local authority, the Rossendale Borough Council, to run through this as well. And we've had a few. I've had a workshop with the UK Infrastructure Bank, which is now the National Wealth Fund, and we've got another in the pipeline next week for them to have a look again through the kind of feasibility and finances of it to see where it can go. As I said, it's an innovation project. We're still working on kind of the project phasing and the financial modelling. So currently we don't have like exact return estimates in terms of what it's going to cost for or likely cost in terms of what's coming out the other end. But the financing strategy is very much revolving around proving the model and to be suitable for long-term project finance investment for the institutional investors, that long-term reliable income can be secured. And the project return figures we have at the moment that are kind of rough and very kind of off of what we're kind of plugging in do suggest that it is feasible. They've got the assumptions at the moment around economies of scale to bring costs down, and we're still working out kind of where that's going. In terms of the funding strategy, This is kind of where we're going with it. We're looking essentially to become non-grant dependent with this. At the moment, we're heavily reliant on grant funding to get us to where we need to be. And we're starting to kind of look at how it can be fine-tuned and kind of scaled and implemented across the country. Right now, the demonstrator projects at kind of the local kind of special purpose vehicle level. To get to this point, we need that grant funding. The initial smaller projects, as it kind of grows, will need equity funding by investors with social and green agendas. As a project hopefully quickly de-risks and becomes more commercially viable, we're mixing in increasing amounts of infrastructure debt will ultimately be refinanced by a long-term large investor, which we can expect to follow, the trodden path by new infrastructure concepts, such as how broadband was rolled out. That's kind of the idea that we're looking to follow. Also, equity funding required at kind of the national CIC level, where our core staff will sit and whose function is it to develop and set up the projects in our pipeline, set up and maintain central systems and contacts and IP and licensing, how we license out to kind of the special purpose vehicles that we're looking to set up. The template that we'll establish will be rolled out across the country. Councils, community energy organisations, and their terrace streets kind of involved in that. The initial priority for us is to secure funding for a 10 to 100 home pilot, prove concepts more widely, so that we can run the figures at a larger scale, so that we can get more learning back, improve out the concepts to investors and to people, because they're the most important. We can prove that it works, it saves people money, keep the investors happy, and we can have a nice, lovely model. So what have we learned? What have we learned so far? How the big challenge is how do we create exactly that, a large scale, low risk, high quality retrofit for traditional housing and ensure good quality assurance. As you can imagine, there's lots of learning coming out of the project as we go. This is being noted down, and we are still quite early doors with this. So when we've got it all together, we're likely to run another session where we'll go more into a bit of detail. But for now, I suppose one big thing that has come out of kind of where we're at with this is kind of procurement of things. Most large scale schemes work with contractors who are not direct to consumer. But because we're potentially working with vulnerable households, it's important for us that contractors have experience working in and around people who have vulnerabilities, and some of these properties that we're going to be working in will have people in at the time of the time that the retrofit is going to be happening. Direct to consumer contractors, on the flip side, may be quite small and aren't necessarily geared up to do that large scale retrofit in terms of accreditation or in terms of even just capacity, that they're not in a position to do it. So how can we increase and improve the supply chain without taking people further away from kind of the grant funded streams where they can potentially make some money. Another point that's come out of this again on the point of contractors is the early engagement is key. This is contractors, and it's also people. Making sure that you're having those conversations around what you need or what you want to do very early on. For example, for contractors and the borehole drillers, we had a conversation with them and decided on who we wanted to go with in August. But the earliest availability they had was in January. So we had to kind of adjust the timescales accordingly as to where we were going to be. Everybody's got different availabilities. We've got people saying that they could be available next week. We've got people that are saying 6 months before we can get them where we need them to be. But then there's also the other side of that of not engaging too quickly with people before things have been properly finalized. As I say, the design work for this isn't complete, it's completely complete. So engaging too soon with people can often leave them not engaging properly with you because they're not necessarily interested until you've got a finished product that they can have a glance over and see whether it's something that they're interested in. Another thing that's fallen out is kind of the energy justice, kind of the credit meters versus prepayment meters, and kind of how we need to weigh up householders' budgeting needs and see if we can help them in another way, whether it's whether when it's required. Um, heat pumps in of themselves, there's a risk of non-heating, and therefore there's the risk of a higher cost of sticking in a heat pump for somebody on prepayment and then them running out of credit, the heat pump going off, and then them having to spend a lot of money getting it back up to where it needs to be in terms of the heat demand. Um, so we're working through that at the moment. It highlights the customer journey side that we're trying to build, and we've got our lovely energy champions as part of this that doing that work for us, that are going into people's homes and putting on events and talking to people around this and supporting them the best way that we can, so that nobody's kind of left on their own. Other things that we've come across, touch on briefly, is kind of the sequencing of works in people's homes with this. It's not something necessarily with Fabric first, but how do we make sure, again, with timescales, that we're not putting in the heat pump too soon before the fabric retrofit's done? How are we getting it through to that point, solar and everything? We're working with potentially several contractors all doing different things in people's properties. There's issues with liability and how that kind of pads out, as to responsibilities, because in Rossendale there's not a huge amount of large contractors that can install ground source heat pumps, retrofit solar PV. There may be some, but again, they're on big frameworks. They're working for other organisations, so they're not necessarily interested in the short term with working on these smaller programs. And then there's the heat pump journey as kind of how that works with the person and how that customer kind of heat pump journey kind of rolls out, and how informed we keep people along the way so that they know exactly what's going on. And then on top of all that, there's also the complexities around planning applications, road closures. Can you imagine if we're boring in the street, we're having to look for section 50s and kind of see where we kind of go with that. A couple of the properties we've got lying conservation areas, so we're trying to do belts and braces with this project. We've had a go at kind of some planning applications to see what we can get out of it for some learning. We've had conversations around the usage of hydrants for drilling, which is a conversation with United Utilities. But all of this has it's been quite useful that we've had a really good relationship with the local authority. They've had our backs with it, and they've helped us out when we've needed them to. So that, for me, that's a big one. That if you are kind of starting out on something, that you do start those conversations with the local authority quite early on, and try and get yourself not quite embedded, but just in a position where they'll lend you an ear and help you out when it's needed. Brilliant. So in terms of what's next, we've got a couple of webinars that'll be coming up, targeted, one for local authorities and one for community organisations. And as I say, they're in February, and hopefully by then, all things permitting, we should have fully retrofit, well, 3 fully retrofit properties that we can hopefully be singing and dancing around, and we can start to collect good data as to how this is working. And thank you. If there are any questions.
Andrew. If anybody's got any questions, please just raise your hand and we can unmute. We've got about 10 minutes before Jonathan's section, so please do fire away if you've got questions. Sarah's put a sort of comment in the chat. Sarah, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and tell us a bit more about this challenge.
Yes, I've already attended a couple of presentations on this, and every single time I'm so impressed, and there's so much complexity. There's things that you have thought of, and then the things that I haven't thought of, and more came out tonight. So it's amazing to even start on this journey. I have experience of a new Together Housing eco estate that's been built in the ward next to mine. And we've had terrific problems, ground source heat pump, solar PV, and the residents are repeatedly saying, despite having had all the training, that there's no heat in the houses and they can't work the system. And it's an ongoing problem that we are having to face. So that's one thing. But the second thing is, in Pendle, 62% of our houses are terraces, and they're stone walled houses, solid stone, and they'll be the same in Rossendale, I'm absolutely sure. I think people will be really sad to see the stone disappear under external cladding. I think there'd be a lot of fury about that, and I'd be sad too, really. But then I also know that these houses are meant to breathe. They've got lime mortar and stone. They take moisture in, and there's a lot of it in our atmosphere, and they breathe it out again. So obviously the internal insulation, you need a vapor gap, and there's a potential for failure. There's a potential for introducing damp. And of course, all your rooms then become smaller, and it's horrifically disruptive. So I was just wondering how you were getting around that, really.
It is one of our key kind of points and kind of ethos around this is least disruption. And I know that we're putting in a completely new heating system, so that kind of immediately goes out. But I mean, in terms of the retrofit, it is least disruption. You know, we've toyed with the idea of EWI, and yeah, we've come up with the same barrier that it's probably not going to be viable. You know, there are new systems out there that look at stones that are stone slip or kind of art brick that kind of mimic the stone like facade and appearance. And to be honest, they do look really very good. And I think if you were driving past, I mean, probably not for local residents because they see them every day, but if you were driving past, you probably wouldn't tell the difference. If you to an untrained eye, you probably couldn't tell. But it's something we're working through. And I think this is kind of where we're looking at that just enough retrofit to bring the heat load down. And sometimes with some of these properties, we can get to that level with air tightness and ventilation, and then enough insulation in kind of the roof space to make it still breathe, but be airtight enough so that that hot air doesn't leave. But I mean, I'd say watch this space and definitely come to another one when the design's been finalised and we know what we're doing with it.
My
The
officers
other thing is,
and myself, we want to come on a visit. We want to come and see you.
oh, as soon as they're done, I think we'll hopefully have one to. I say fingers crossed, we'd have one that we can have people come and have a look at. But I mean, we are still trying to work through the innovation of it, and there may be a case where we do see if we can get away with internal wall insulation and what that looks like for somebody in there living in there, how it does perform, so that we can kind of have that learning. And it may well just be that it's completely useless and we're not going to do it because it's too disruptive. But
if you think about a terrace, you've only got the front wall and the back wall, so you do have walls that are not affected in the house.
So it is potentially something we can do. And if we need to, that some of these will have radiators under windows that we could potentially recite to help kind of with that. And we can have a look at that front wall. But yeah, like I say, it's something that we're working through to see how we can do this with least disruption. And the whole process, like I say, will be iterative. This will be the demonstrator will be 3. We'll look to do 10, and that might be different slightly. And then we'll look to kind of continue that momentum, and we'll learn as we go.
Really fascinating. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And thanks, Andrew. Does anybody else have any questions? Please feel free to raise your hand, or Dave, you've got your hand up. Do you want to come in?
There we go. I'm muting. Thanks for the presentation. I'm interested in the tenure of the houses that you're working with. So, are they private rented? Are they privately owned? Are they socially rented? Because I'm thinking certainly over 40 years, the households are likely to swap at some point. And how does the funding affect, if you sell the house in 25 years' time, you've still got 15 years worth of cost left. Yeah, what's the thinking on that, please?
So we are targeting mixed tenure streets. So we're looking at kind of everybody, and essentially so that nobody would get left behind with this. But what the kind of financial modelling is looking at is not tying that debt specifically to the person or to the house. It'll be tied directly to the infrastructure, so that if there is a tenure change, or if somebody, if people are moving in and out, that it wouldn't necessarily follow that person around, or then it wouldn't necessarily impact the value of the property as it's sold on. It would just be the new person that will be moving in would look to sign up to potentially the heat club, or the energy club, whatever we choose to call it, and then they will reap the benefits of essentially the flexibility that comes with the system.
Presumably that then means some training of the local conveyancing solicitors to actually understand that, because as they're
Yeah.
advising folk coming in, it's just a strange new thing.
Yes, exactly. We do, like I said at the beginning, we do have lawyers that are part of this, but they're very expensive. So we're taking their time, as and when, and these questions are piled up so that we can use as much time as we can when we've got them. So we're not paying through the nose without enough questions. So yeah, so like I said, some of this is we're still working on kind of the minutiae of it, but essentially, yeah, we need to make sure that people locally know their stuff with this, and we also need to make sure that people that are moving into the properties are also clued up enough on the new system. They're not coming in and costing themselves a fortune because they're not knowing how to use it properly, which is why we've kind of built in that energy champion model, that we've got people as part of this that can either go out and support people in their homes, or offer the support over the phone if they'd rather, or via live chat or something like that.
Great. Thank you. And we've got Diana with your hand up. You want to unmute yourself?
Hi. Thank you, Andrew. That's really interesting. I just wonder if you can clarify a couple of points. One was when would you expect to see the first example of a street having been completed?
It's all funding dependent at the moment, which
Right.
is why we're trying to build this so it doesn't depend on funding, because this is kind of where we're at. We're all kind of holding our breaths, waiting for kind of the funding people to get back to us to say, yep, you've got it, go ahead, and then we can start rolling it out. If it all goes to plan, say maybe in the next few years, depending on where we're at. It's very funding dependent.
And how, so you've got a couple, how many streets have you actually got, and how are you intending to add in more streets?
So I should have put a slide in, I was conscious of time. We're working currently with the Centre for Energy Equality through the Fairer Warmth app. So we've got the energy champions that are doing basic energy advice and support out in the communities. And as part of this, as we progress, there will be essentially a button on there that will say, we've identified your street as a potential net zero terrace street, and then they will press the button and it will start to take them through that journey. We'd have to hit a critical mass with the streets, otherwise, we wouldn't necessarily go ahead with it. So we'd start with that, and then as streets start to come kind of, I say, online in inverted commas, when more and more people are getting involved, and we can kind of focus attention on those terraces. At the moment, like I say, it's still very early doors with this. It was a cold start community. We've been going great guns with kind of where we're at with the community engagement. But there's still quite a lot to do for us to get to where we need to be when we've got multiple terraces wanting to kind of come online.
And you talked about it being a national thing, but are you concentrating in a fairly
Concentrating in Rossendale at the moment, but we are eventually we want it to be national, and we're not 100% averse to kind of the methodology be tested in areas that may already be, halfway with this. They may have already done a big retrofit scheme and they're looking to decarbonize the heat. How do they do it? So, if those organizations, local authorities or whoever, are interested, I would implore them to get in touch with us so that we can kind of share that learning, because that's what this is all about.
Thank you.
Amazing, thanks. I just shared a link to the Fairer Warmth app in the chat if anybody is interested in checking that out. Does anybody have, I'll probably take one more question, or if not, I'll hand over to Jonathan. So just opening up the floor. Okay, Jonathan, over to you then.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Yeah, my name's Jonathan Atkinson. I work for two organisations, two community benefit society, community energy organisations. One's called Carbon Co-op. Been going for 13, 14 years and do like a broad kind of sweep of different energy projects, and retrofit's part of that. And then People Powered Retrofit, established more recently, came out of Carbon Co-op and is a one-stop shop for retrofit. We're going to talk a bit about those two kind of projects and the different things that we do. I'd just like to highlight this. So this was the Clean Power by 2030 plan. It was published by the National Energy System Operator yesterday. This was in response to Labour's ambition to decarbonise the energy generation system, the electricity system, for 2030. And it's their plan for how that would happen. It's a super inspiring read, and I'd recommend people have a look. One of the things you can see in there, one of the key kind of enablers for clean power by 2030 is the widespread adoption of efficient products and energy efficiency measures needed to manage the electrification of demand. So obviously more heat and power moving, and heat and transport moving to electricity, more demand for electricity. We can't meet that demand without things like demand reduction through retrofit. And there's a prediction of 11% savings from energy efficiency by 2030. So it's a real key enabler. Community energy and retrofit, I don't want to go over what's already Megan's already said, but yeah, there's opportunities there because there's a gap in provision. There's public schemes aren't great. Community energy is a trusted source of information, and there's a lack of provision for owner-occupiers, private rental. There are challenges, though, to community energy organisations being involved in this. And we've just recently co-authored a report with CSE for Access Foundation, which looked at the potential for community energy organisations to get involved in retrofit of private homes, retrofit of community buildings, and like the barriers they face. So again, as Megan says, there's loads of interest, but it's hard to access technical expertise required to do retrofit. As kind of Andrew's kind of hinted at there, it's not necessarily that simple a process. Hiring staff with the right expertise and experience is challenging. Finding the business models that work and seeking investment capital to get things off the ground can all be a challenge. I wanted to highlight this dynamic. And this comes from the different organisations that we work with, different sized community energy organisations. On the top scale, there's technical expertise, cost and risk. So obviously, being an organisation that's happy to take on or has the capacity to take on that technical expertise, cost involved, the risk involved, goes in one direction. And then the scale of the service and the value proposition goes the other. And like just bringing in the different things people might do. And these are some examples of things community energy organisations do in the retrofit space. At the lower end, where, organisations don't want to take on that technical expertise, cost and risk, you might be doing energy advice or signposting to others. And then as you kind of build expertise, or if you want to, because there's no pressure that organisations have to go down this route, but get involved in things like draft proofing, kind of simple energy efficient improvements, thermal imaging surveys, just kind of low impact, but low risk at the same time, but helps give people an idea about what they can do in their homes. Then as you get more, it's like retrofit assessments, like they can be quite simple or can be more technically involved. Supply chain engagement, engaging with builders, contractors, architects, and then one-stop shops at the other end. So there's kind of quite a broad range of things, but there's a greater ability to generate income at the right end, but that requires technical expertise, cost, and risk. So again, it's not necessary that people need to be anywhere on this. I'm just highlighting the dynamics. Okay, so Carbon Co-op, we've got 350 members. We're based in Greater Manchester, 17 members of staff at the moment. We're here to empower people and communities to participate in the clean energy transition. We have a holistic approach to energy services. We get involved in retrofit, energy systems, energy planning, that sort of thing. And our principles that drive us and underpin that around deep retrofit, energy justice, and collective action, people working together. That's all the challenges. I'm going to highlight a few projects just to give you an idea of the things that we've done over the years. One of the, quite early in our development, quite ambitious, was Community Green Deal. This was deep retrofit of 9 homes around Greater Manchester. We assessed the homes. We worked with architects that we were partnering with to design a design package. We then tendered for the works and brought a contractor on board. It was a group contract, so we were intermediaries between the 9 householders and contractors and what have you. We worked with the Department of Energy Climate Change, and they gifted us £400,000 that we then lent out to householders at 0% rates of interest, now being paid back over time. We helped them get eco as well, and there was a substantial amount of their own contributions. Just kind of demonstrate what's possible in this area. Really high quality retrofit, really big impact, and really kind of trying to push the ambition of the government policy at the time, and to kind of demonstrate what could be possible, what community energy could do in terms of opening doors and pushing barriers, really. And those houses, the performance is still performing now. Over 50% energy savings, 60% carbon savings. More latterly, we've been involved in local energy advice demonstrators, and we've been piloting one ourselves called Energize, which uses behavioural change techniques developed in the health sector to empower and to reach householders that may often be missed by provision. Public provision might not necessarily be the people to jump on the internet to find out their own advice. They've been running in-person energy advice around South Manchester, working in community centres, working with home improvement agencies, working with energy champions as well, and the early adopters. Yeah, and as I said, using these kind of behavioural kind of techniques to kind of maximise the impact of that. And it's had a really large reach as well. Yeah, different things going on. We've got loads of different events we're doing all over Manchester. Draft proofing, damp mould, heating controls, beginner's guide to retrofit. So we're running a whole programme of in-person events. I think these are great, but it's very challenging at the moment to run. This is like a demonstrator and innovation project. And up until recently, the environment hasn't been there for long-term funding of energy advice. Hopefully things will change and may be changing. Then finally, I wanted to talk about super exciting project that's on site at the moment, which is an area-based approach to retrofit. It kind of has some similarities to Net Zero Terrace, I think, in the sense of we're an area-based intermediary. Carbon Co-op is working in an area of fuel poverty in South Manchester. What we're able to do in this project is aggregate finance. So we've got some loans from the local authority, which are 0% interest and are going as charged on the house. We're then building a design which is based on local typologies and archetypes. It still needs to be amended for specific houses, but we're creating like a palette of improvements. Procured the contractor and yeah, delivering the project. We're working with a social enterprise contractor, B for Box, who, as part of the work, are training new apprentices on the project as well. So yeah, it's nice terrace houses in in Levenshulme, and we're doing external wall insulation and different types of insulation, ventilation, what have you. And one of the things we did in this process was do a lot of engagement, participatory engagement with the householders as part of the area-based approach, involve them in the design of the process, involve them in like making, certain design choices. But yeah, it's on site at the moment and works should be complete this side of Christmas or shortly after. That's like half a dozen houses. So I think area-based schemes are something there's a lot of interest in, and a lot of the financial kind of providers are really excited, but they're wanting schemes for like 1,000 properties. When you do small-scale approaches, you realise how hard it is to engage householders in a collective scheme and get everyone to sign up together. It's actually like a challenging process. So what we're trying to do is generate learning and understanding that can then scale and then can inform bigger schemes, or we can scale ourselves. A lot of local authorities are really interested in this, and in particular that municipal lending aspect as well. I think area-based approaches have the potential to unlock a lot of demand for retrofit by engaging collective action and communities working together in a way that other approaches to retrofit don't. So there's a lot of potential in this, I think. Yeah, in terms of lessons from Carbon Corp, I think it's about building technical expertise in a stepwise manner. I think we've benefited from a collaboration with Urbed, which are a urban design company with retrofit expertise. So we grew as they grew, and we were able to benefit from that. And I think that is quite, if you remember that kind of graph, if you're going towards the more ambitious end, you need that expertise really in a partnership or in-house. As we've grown, we've been able to bring expertise in-house, which is essential to offering services that people are willing to pay for. I think that's a kind of test, really. And we've been generating income from different services, retrofit services, since that kind of early days. And identifying what's unique about what you do and focusing on that. I think there's a tendency to get pulled in all kind of different directions. And yeah, by being focused, that collective action, deep retrofit, the energy justice has enabled us to grow. Okay, so yeah, that's Carbon Co-op. People Powered Retrofit came out of Carbon Co-op, and it came out of some of that income generating aspects and people that wanted our services, but we didn't have the capacity to meet that demand. So it was established in 2021 from a community share issue for £750,000. Again, it was like based on that track record, based on people's willingness to pay for these services, we invested in the capacity to meet that demand. There are 350 investor members and 14 members of staff. And yeah, we're a one-stop shop based in Greater Manchester, but we operate kind of in the region, travel to work area. It's an end-to-end service, and it meets the needs of householders. We've worked with more than 200 clients since 2021, 2022. And as I said, it's like different from the area-based scheme in that we're meeting we're doing individual projects and meeting individual demands. But we're also engaged in supply chain development training. And I suppose the barriers that we're trying to address are what's blocking householders from doing retrofit. They're often overwhelmed by the complexity and technical detail, and they find it very hard to make the decisions because of that. They're also concerned about risks and what might go wrong, and confused about conflicting advice that they've read on the internet, seen in the papers, or they might hear from people. It's often quite confusing, not really sure. Should they do a heat pump? Should they do fabric first? Should they do a solar panels? What's the first thing to do? It's quite hard for them to understand. Problems finding contractors, and problems or concerns with high quality work or the risks therein. So householders, what they want from a service, and this is all built from our research and development work that we did in the establishment of PPR. But yeah, householders wanted a complete retrofit design service and a single point of contact. They weren't having to talk to loads of people. Retrofit advisor that could give basic help and signposting and assessment. That's one of the key things we do is like a retrofit assessment, go into a house and sell that assessment to people. That gives them an overview of what they need to do, what to do first, how to build like a package of measures, and then detailed design advice. I think there's a lot of providers out there offering assessments, but how do householders go beyond that? what are the kind of offers and services that help them go beyond. And yeah, I've been doing loads of different things. Got a great team of people. We've got quite a big design team. There's 3 people there, one architect, 2 architectural technologists, and a lot of the work we're doing now is around those design services. But we also have other people, an advisor, got an assessor, and we work to support other organisations as well. So growing team. And yeah, lots of projects on site, lots of work getting done, different kind of projects, all driven by the needs of the householder. Some of them are quite light touch, single measures or a couple of measures. Some of them are like complete whole house deep retrofit. We're starting to create different augmented services for different kind of needs. And just to kind of flag that we're now part, or people part of retrofit now have a community of practice of other energy cooperatives, energy charities who are delivering retrofit services. So it may feel like, oh, there's no one out there doing anything, but there is a growing network of organizations. All these organizations, we supply our Home Retrofit Planner assessment tool, and they're all delivering assessments using our tool. Some of them using other tools as well, but CSC are one of those, but there are others like York Community Energy, Changeworks in Scotland, Cumbria Action for Sustainability. And I think there's a real power in communities of practice where you're sharing best practice and learning and helping to grow as a sector, rather than kind of individual organizations trying to do their thing on their own. There's definitely power from collaborative work. Just briefly, like the reason for the webinar comes out of the Community Energy Fund, and people part of retrofit, we've been working with a number of applicants to the Community Energy Fund who are running projects elsewhere in the UK, and just wanted to share a flavour of what different people are doing, because I think Community Energy Fund is quite flexible. So if people have ideas and projects they want to take forward, like Community Energy Fund can support that. In South Yorkshire, we're supporting South Yorkshire EcoFit, who are developing one-stop shop service similar to ours. We're offering mentoring and knowledge share, and done a series of kind of workshops with them just to help them grow their services, grow their confidence, help them understand the market. Letchworth Garden City Heritage Foundation, my colleagues there tonight in Letchworth. So obviously it's like high heritage area, and I totally take on board what people have been saying about the limitations of different types of fabric. We're developing a set of retrofit approaches for them. That's just on the back of a similar project we did in Saltaire, where we designed like a series of interventions and a design guide that then local people could use to inform retrofit upgrades. In Dorset, Dorset Community Energy, they're doing a feasibility study on a one-stop shop, but with them, we're doing a lot of end user research. So like helping them understand people in their area who might use the service, what are they after, and helping them design that service. And then the Alt Housing Cooperative in Liverpool, we're doing a really similar thing to Net Zero Terrace in that we're looking at a shared ground loop heat pump system where with boreholes and what have you. I think the kind of the simpler thing here is like they're all owned by the same housing co-op, which owns multiple properties. So a lot of those kind of technicalities over land rights and all sorts of things like are taken away. So we're doing a feasibility assessment along with some energy services engineers. We're just doing the retrofit side and the engagement side. So yeah, some learning, I think, from people powered retrofit. It's being really focused on clients and householders and what they need, not kind of coming in with a pre kind of design solution. It's like, what do they need? Mapping and research and understanding, being iterative and flexible in development, building that technical expertise and capacity, and that is in-house, and that's a way that community energy organizations can grow over time. Testing and piloting, starting small but starting, getting trading, and being really collaborative and open, and being open to working with others. So yeah, that's my learning, and happy to take any questions.
Jonathan, yeah, if anyone's got questions, please do pop your hand up again. and we'll take them as they come.
I, I'm I work for the Church of England, and we've got probably about 250 vicarages in Lancashire, and if you times that by 5 for the number of vicarages around the northwest, and I was just wondering um, whether a model like you've come up with would work for 1,000 properties sort of in one go, or whether we would kind of need to break that up, and whether that's kind of allowable, because as I say, it's kind of spread over rural and urban and yeah, right across the different sort of house types as well.
Yeah, do you have like an asset management like plan then for all these different properties?
Yeah, we've got a you know, we've some of these properties are stone built, some of these are new build. It just depends where they are in relation within the parish. A lot of them have had insulation put in, but going to the next step for net zero is the kind of our broader challenge, and we've not got large teams kind of looking after the properties. They're kind of generally reactive folk, where there is a bit of spare capacity. They've done sort of, as I say, insulation, thermostatic controlled radiators and the like. But you know, sort of moving into PV on those properties and alternative heating,
Yeah.
we need some help, and I think we're
Yeah,
a little bit concerned about kind of just jumping into the
no,
market,
totally.
because there are so many people who are kind of out there wishing to take hard-earned money off people.
Yeah, and I think you're a bit like a housing provider and a bit like a load of owner occupiers, because a housing provider has an asset stock improvement plan for their stock that they own, where over multiple years they'll come in with improvements over time, and it'll be planned for the next 20, 25 years. And but often they will have very similar housing type, like estates or terraces or what have you. Um, so you've got that challenge really. I think the key thing you need to do is uh, build information on the houses that you've got. Like that, building a plan is like absolutely the first thing that anyone should do, whether it's an owner occupier or a kind of housing provider or like yourself, you know, and that's having really good information. And it might be an iterative process where you're going out, you're doing assessments, you're building that over time, building that knowledge, trying to highlight kind of commonalities and what have you. But I think at the point where you have that really good information, you can then make some decisions on what you actually do or how you do it, because you might find that there is just no pattern to it. They're just all totally different. But you might find that, oh, an improvement to kind of walls or lofts or what have you could be achieved, you know, through kind of like going house to house, and that would like building like a supply chain, you know, building maybe like an approach that could be then rolled out. But yeah, definitely first step is to build the information. Don't feel like you have to act too quickly, because that's one of the key lessons of retrofit. Acting too quickly, you can regret that, because you can do things that you might have unintended consequences or might negate things later down the line. So having a really good plan and putting it together, that's my advice.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, cheers.
Great. Diana?
Two questions really. One is I wonder if you could say anything about what the change of government has done in terms of releasing funds and making things easier. And the other question is how might you go about starting to engage with contractors with the local supply chain?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's two bits to the Labour approach here. One is the local power plan and one is the warm homes plan. And the local power plan is amazing because it's part of this clean energy plan, and it engages municipalities and community energy in a plan to generate massive amounts of renewable energy in local communities everywhere. There's investment in councils, coming, and there's also investment in community energy as well. Now, slightly annoyingly, they at the moment, so that's run by GB Energy. So slightly annoyingly at the moment, they want to exclude things like retrofit from that local power plan. They see retrofit as living in the warm homes plan, which is like different part of DESNZ, not GB Energy, different approach. Community energy, with a strong voice, has said to government, no, community energy is holistic, and so it should the local power plan, and not just like retrofit. We should include some of the things Andrew was talking about, like smart systems and these different innovative approaches as well. The warm homes plan at the moment, the budget last week, they basically just rolled over the funding from the last government, so they're not really. And I think part of that is like they focus so much on this local power plan or the clean energy plan. They want to make sure that's running now because it's so ambitious, the target. They really have to start now. So I think at the moment it's kind of wait and see. One thing there is a commitment to double the size of the cooperative movement over the term of the parliament. And one thing the co-op movement is saying, the Co-op Party and others are saying, we want retrofit co-ops to be like a real key front and center of that. So that's interesting. So there's kind of promising signs, but nothing much concrete on retrofit in community energy. In terms of local engagement with contractors, I mean, we look at it similar to the way you engage in householders. Contractors find this work messy, disruptive. It's beyond a lot of their comfort zones, and for some of them, it can take more time, and it can push their profit margins or destroy them, and they can be really annoyed. For others, they love this kind of thing. It's higher value. It's putting something back. It's something when they master something in this area, they can be quite unique in the area, and they can have order books full for kind of months and even years. In terms of engagement, it's kind of similar to households. It's getting out and meeting people, holding events, networking events, and finding those. We talked about community champions, finding like retrofit champions with supply chain, because they are out there and they will talk to other people, other contractors, and kind of evangelize as well. We've run kind of knowledge share events, technical events where there's best practice so contractors can come and learn. With PPR, we're running like contractor training as well, where it's like retrofit fundamentals, we call it, so they get a grounding in it. But yeah, there's loads to go out there, and I think often we see contractors as separate and over there, and it's really a case of just like getting in and engaging with them, meeting them, understanding their needs, and like working with them, because they're as much a part of the solution as the householders as everyone else.
Thank you.
Right. Has anybody else got any questions for Jonathan? Looks like it. Well, oh, Louise, you've just unmuted yourself. Did you have a question?
Yes, just can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Sorry. It's regarding the training with the apprenticeships. How was that developed?
Yeah, so B4Box are they call themselves a training contractor. So they're a contractor. They do maintenance and improvement on Stockport homes, housing stock, housing provider, and they do lots of like actual building and maintenance work. But they're also a training organization. They have like a training. They have a training center, and for many years they've been what they call multi-skill training, which is kind of not just training apprentices to do brickwork or joinery or electricians, but like multi-skill together. And unfortunately, in the UK, we've been going down the route of being more and more specialised and losing this kind of multi-skilled approach, which is so important, not just for retrofit, but for maintenance improvement in the home. So part of the success of that was partnering with them at an early stage on our area-based scheme. We didn't do a really a kind of very competitive tender. we did a negotiated tender with them because they're a social enterprise, and we've developed the scheme with them. So the specifications we know work for them, and they're not kind of like, we're not foisting something that's totally alien on them. We then got a little bit of support from the MCS Foundation to help scale them up in kind of providing a retrofit training standard. So already they're doing apprenticeships. Now they're doing apprenticeships with this retrofit training standard as well. But I can't speak highly enough about B4Box. They're a really transformative organization. They're award winning. And yeah, they're really fighting the fight for kind of this kind of multi-skilled approach.
Thank you. I'm going to check them out properly as well. Thank you very much.
Great.
Just so I can maybe put a link in the chat, Jonathan, did you say it was B for bots?
B4Box.
B for box. Okay, I've got it. I'll pop a link in the chat for those
Thank
who are
you.
interested. Great. Okay, thank you. I think last call for questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap today's session up, I think. Thanks, Jonathan. That's really, really great. And Andrew as well. Really great, varied sort of experience there. So thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen again. Apologies. Okay, so just really to share a few sort of, if you wanted to do a bit more research and reading, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but there's some information, there's some extra resources there. As you see, a lot of stuff on Carbon Co-op's work, as well as some guides and tools that CSE have developed. Jonathan mentioned the piece of research that CSE did and co-authored with Carbon Co-op, the report for Access Foundation on barriers and opportunities for community energy and retrofit. So I haven't popped a link for that there because it's not yet publicly available, but it will come soon. So if you've not already sort of signed up to CSE's e-news, that's a good way of getting our updates and launches of our publications, such as that report. So we'll share the slides so you can use all the hyperlinks on this if you want to read up some more. Just to let you know, we've got 2 more webinars in this series before Christmas. We've got the next one on the 26th of November, which is about developing business models and different financing opportunities for community energy projects. And then we've also got one on community transport projects in December. So we're still just finalising speakers for that, but if you are interested in finding out a bit more, you can sign up using our Eventbrite link. So we'll put that in the follow-up email from today's session. So yeah, I've popped a link here for our survey. So I'm actually just going to share it in the chat. We have got a very short survey which we're struggling to get people to respond to. So if you can take a bit of time before you go on with your evenings this evening, that would be great. It should be on the, I hope that was the right link. Yes. I'm just checking now because it seems like a bit of a funny link. Hopefully that works. Apologies. Oh dear. This has not gone as I had planned. Okay, well, hopefully that does work. It looks like it's struggling to open. So what we'll also do is put it in the follow-up email. So if you can provide us some feedback following today's session, that would be really helpful. Just for a very quick high-level feedback, I'm just going to share our Mentimeter again. So if you are able to just stay with us for a couple more minutes, I will share this. So if you go on menti.com and put in the code to join, which is, oh, apologies, 34355639, the same code we were using for the houses at the beginning of today's session. If you could go onto menti.com and use that code, I'll also pop it in the chat. 435 5639. And if you could let us know how this webinar has been today, whether you found it useful, be very helpful. For some reason I'm not able to open up chat. I don't know if I can maybe rely on Andrew or Jonathan. Are any of you able to pull up the chat for me and just pop the Menti code in? Just for some reason I can't open the chat when I'm sharing the Menti. Ah, here we go. Now I can, because you've written it. That's okay, Gary. So if you go on menti.com and you type in the code 3435 5639. It's just a polling tool that we use to capture some feedback. You can go on menti.com on your phone, or you can go on it on your browser. But if you log in and use that code I've just put in the chat, you should be able to access that question. That's great. Good, 100% of the 6 people that have logged on have said this has been helpful. That's really fantastic. Just going to go to the next question, which is, yeah, what have been your key takeaways from today's webinar? Got already some insights there. That's really great. Cool. Okay, I will leave that Menti open if you've got a chance to continue providing feedback onto that. What I'll do is, apologies, I wasn't able to send the actual proper survey link. I think that the link that I sent was broken, so apologies for that. What I'll do is I'll drop an email over to all of you now, so you get that link and you can respond to the survey. We just to let you know that we'll be sharing the sort of recording and the slides, but it probably won't be until next week, because my colleague who's in charge of all the follow-up is currently unwell and doesn't work on Thursdays and Fridays. So apologies for the bit of the day, but you'll get it as soon as we can. But yeah, I just want to say thank you all so much for spending this evening with us, and hopefully we'll see you at future webinars. And yeah, take care, everybody. And thanks to Jonathan and Andrew again for your lovely presentations. Take care. Bye.